Welcome back to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. My name is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital and host of this podcast. Today, my guest is Marc Riccio. Marc is the president and CEO of USA Lacrosse, a former Hofstra lacrosse player and longtime NFL executive. Marc has served as the CEO of USA Lacrosse since 2021. Marc, welcome to our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show.
Thank you, Wayne. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to see you again. I feel like we just were on stage together having a similar conversation at Peak, which was a great sports tech conference. It was the first conference that they have had in Las Vegas, and you were amazing. What did you think of Peak?
It was really good. The energy, both day one and day two, were impressive. The number of folks on the floor, the quality of the speakers was really well done conference. A lot of great conversation, a lot of good insight. I really enjoyed it.
There's a lot of energy in the room. I mean, it really was exciting to see everybody together, and it was exciting. They certainly were excited to hear about what's happening at USA Lacrosse. And I thought you did a great job sharing what was happening at USA Lacrosse. And I'd love for you to tell our audience here on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show, first of all, like, what is USA Lacrosse and where are we going here with everything?
So, and it's interesting you mentioned Peak as the lead-in. What I really enjoyed about Peak was the diversity of individuals speaking. You had tech to sports properties to leagues, and in our case, a national governing body, which is not always the case in terms of getting an audience to share what you do, how you use technology or innovation to move the sport forward. So, national governing body, we are an entity that is a 501c3 organization. We're mission-based, but as my treasurer said, 501c3 is a tax status, not a business model. Our job is to generate revenue to support the game. And that comes really in three buckets. And, we say fuel the growth, enrich the experience, and field the best national teams. So governing bodies, our job is to put Olympic teams and world championship teams in the field of play. But also it's about the experience, background checks for coaches, coach education, rules, equipment standards, governance. Not the real dynamic stuff, but the stuff that is necessary for a sport to function at all levels, day in and day out. And then what we call the base of the pyramid. That is providing more opportunities and fueling the growth for kids to pick up a stick. Certainly, that drives a pipeline of players that ultimately goes up to your national team. But more importantly, it creates financial stability, health and wellness for the game. And as we all know, more kids playing sport is good for communities. And so our job really starts at that youth level all the way up to what we call the tip of the pyramid to U.S. national teams. And we, as a governing body, are like USA Hockey, USA Basketball, USA Football, US Ski and Snow. And that's what we're tasked with doing for the sport of lacrosse for both men and women.
What I find is so exciting, and I know you as well, and everybody involved in USA Lacrosse, is the fact that men's and women's lacrosse will be in the Olympics in 2028. I mean, every time I've said that to you, you get this amazing smile, and you must be so excited about that.
Oh, let's go. Yeah, I will tell you, I'll share a quick story. So this was this was a couple years ago, right after we found out that we were going to get into the Olympics. And we had a women's under 20 team on our campus, which is we've got a training facility headquarters down in Sparks, Maryland. And they were there for a training camp before they were going to go compete in Asia for a world championship. And we get together with all the teams to talk a little bit about what we do, how we do it. Because when you're an athlete, you're just going, you are competing. You're not thinking about NGB and, the entity. So our job is to educate these athletes about what we do. And I was having a conversation with them, and I said to them, I want you all to stop and close your eyes for a moment. Some of you in this room will walk out onto the floor of the Coliseum for the opening ceremonies in LA 28, and you will represent USA Lacrosse, and you will represent your sport at the Olympic Games. Stop and think about that for a moment. And it became real in that moment for these athletes to be like, wow, like what I see on TV, I can do that. And that was and has been incredibly impactful. And it's a great, wind tailwind for us to be able to talk about the Olympics, talk about, competing on the international stage, and more people will see the game of lacrosse than we've ever had in the history of our sport. And obviously, hopefully that, continues to drive more participation opportunities.
I was going to get into this a little bit later, but while we're here, I mean, it's so exciting. As you said, you're going to have the athletes, say lacrosse, men's and women athletes walking out there representing the country. Let's talk about the structure of the game, right? I mean, and sort of the difference, I guess, the 6-on-6 game that will be played at the Olympics versus what is the traditional game that's played in high school and college today, but even in the pros. So talk about what that's going to all look like and why that's so exciting.
Sure. So there are several factors that led to the creation of what is called sixes. And sixes is 6-on-6 lacrosse, men and women. The rule set for the men and women are more closely aligned than they say might be at the field level, but the women are not in equipment. They have goggles like they do at the field game. Men are in full equipment. But the game is more intuitive for the casual fan. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, it's played on a smaller field. There's no specialty. After a goal, there's no draw or face-off. The goalie picks up the stick, goes in the other direction. It's a much shorter shot clock. And so the idea behind it is like basketball. It is incredibly intuitive for the casual fan to turn on the TV or their device and watch and be like, oh, I get that. And some of the other factors that led to the development of sixes were you need less athletes to compete at a high level. So parity then comes into play. You've got just better teams that are closer aligned because you just need less great athletes to field competitive sixes teams. The other is when it comes to the Olympics and the cost structure of hosting the games, the idea of full field teams with 22 people on the roster for men and women and up to 6 nations, it's just so many more athletes, and that adds to the cost structure. And that adds to the infrastructure for not only housing the athletes, but putting on the games. And so just like flag football, which has a small squad size, lacrosse has a small squad size. But what's really interesting about sixes is when an individual, a young kid starts to play the game, they should be playing on a small-sided field, just like at this high level. And so it aligns with some of the great ways that you start to play the game. The other thing that's really important in terms of sixes is you ask the athletes about the experience, they love it. They love the game. From goalie right on through, it really does put an emphasis on an all-around great lacrosse player who can run the field, play offense, play defense, emotional IQ, creativity. So it really is an exciting version of the game. And we're seeing a lot more youth organizations start sixes programs, but you're also seeing high schools, like high schools in Texas, as an example, launch sixes programs, which is pretty exciting for the sport.
It really is. I mean, and as you said, it's like basketball. I mean, it was so interesting. We had that conversation about how the comparison of lacrosse and basketball and how similar the games are.
I would love to say this. This is for all parents, coaches. When you look at lacrosse not only in and of itself is great in terms of developing physical attributes, mental attributes around athlete health and wellness, but if you're a multi-sport athlete, lacrosse is an incredible complement to basketball, to field hockey, to football, because the principles of matchups, offensive concepts as a team, defensive concepts, sliding, pick and roll, two-man game, boxing out, fast breaks, all of these concepts that you see in sports like football, but also sports like basketball, creating separation, crossover, roll dodges. It's so similar to basketball. It's an incredible complement to your footwork, to your hand-eye coordination, to your IQ and processing skills. And that's what makes lacrosse so special is, one, by itself, it's a great game, but it's also a great complement to other sports.
Well, it's really interesting. I just had an executive for One Team Partners. Her name is Paris Dupree on the show. She's also a lawyer there. And Paris played both lacrosse and basketball at Brown, and she talked exactly about that. Growing up in a basketball family, I used to play back in the day with her dad, and we've known each other for a long time, and how her lacrosse coach gave her this. She was a basketball player, but the lacrosse coach gave her a stick and said, "Go out there." And she said it was almost like it was natural because she was just such a basketball player, and then she went on and she was a tremendous player at Brown and played for the USA lacrosse team as well.
Um, Familiar with Paris, yes. And I will take another step further. I was having a conversation yesterday with a individual in Texas who was a football coach who also played lacrosse. He had his son, who was an offensive lineman, go play lacrosse because it was the best opportunity for that young man to work on his footwork. And his footwork got infinitely better through that experience. And so it's both basketball, it's football, and we are that's something actually we're going to continue to focus on because we want kids to play more sport. Specialization, you hear a lot of chatter around that. It's actually not best practice, despite what a coach might tell a young family that this kid needs to keep playing or else they're going to be left behind. Some of that's a bit of a false narrative, to be honest with you. And the reality is getting kids playing multiple sports, again, not only develops their physical literacy and their movement, but it also prevents injury because you're not getting single sport, usage, if you will, by just playing the same sport over and over again. You're developing your body better. So we're big fans of that. We'll continue to advocate for that multi-sport. But going back to the Olympics, the great thing about the sixes version, as I said, like when someone watches it for the first time, they're going to get it. And that, is really what we're aiming for.
That's tremendous, and it's really just an exciting, jumping off point for the game, right? In general, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, this could really be a way to really springboard the game, to even higher places than it is now. I mean, certainly what you've done on the USA Lacrosse side of things, what's happening with the PLL and the NLL and all that sort of growth that's going on through all that. But now it's like, wow, like what's next is really exciting.
Well, you mentioned something that I think is really important. You mentioned our partners like the PLL, NLL. We are at what I would call a generational moment for the game of lacrosse. And like every sport has those moments where, whether it's soccer and World Cup, I think what hockey been able to do with some of the international competitions in the past year, again, continues to elevate the game of hockey in terms of, big moments and how people engage with that. But I mean, I just hung up the phone with Brett Fruit, who's the commissioner of the NLL, about 20 minutes ago, right before this call. Like our level of coordination with the pro leagues, the PLL, and they've launched their women's leagues, the WLL, as well as the NLL, and the colleges, and the NCAA, and the NFHS, which oversees high school, the college coaches. The level of coordination in our sport is unprecedented. And we actually need to do that because as a sport that we want to continue to elevate, we have to work together. Individually, we can each have some incremental progress, but you got to work together and coordinate your audience, what you do, big moments to drive that exponential exposure, that exponential impact. And so we have to coordinate because we're not big enough to compete with each other or just get in the way of each other by accident. Like we got to make sure we don't even do that. And so we are very fortunate that we've all rallied around the Olympics. You rally around big moments like the NLL championship is just taking place. PLL just launched their season, and then the NCAA Final Four and tournaments coming up. They're in it right now for both Division 1, 2, and 3. Those are all big moments that we all get to rally around, and the more we stay coordinated with that, the more impact we can have.
I remember you telling me, how big the men's and women's lacrosse tournaments are for the NCAA. I mean, just as one of the biggest championships for them.
Yeah, it was one of my learnings actually rather recently. The men's finals, the men's Division 1 lacrosse championship is the second largest single day NCAA championship that the NCAA has. There's men's basketball final, men's lacrosse final for a single day championship. over the course of time, certainly baseball does well, softball does well, volleyball, but even over the course of the NCAA lacrosse championship, the men's and women's first round tournament or first round games were this past weekend. I think the men set an attendance record for first round attendance at their championships. Some great games and great schools. The other thing to keep in mind is we talk so much about Division One lacrosse, Division Two, and Division Three. There's even three times as many opportunities to play Division Three lacrosse than there is Division One. Club lacrosse has got a great college scene. So there's so many opportunities for kids to continue to play at the next level. I mean, our job certainly is to support all of that and shepherd all of that. But as we go back to the earlier point, like it's a generational opportunity for all of us to coordinate and work together to get more people and get more eyeballs on the game.
It's been amazing to watch. I mean, very fortunate. Two of my nieces play Division One lacrosse. One at Elon, who's graduating very soon, and then my other niece who's at Skidmore. I mean, and just to watch them and see the progress that they've had, but also what's really been amazing is just to see them grow as young women, and how. I guess the greatest part is really even just to watch them with their teammates, and just how much joy they're getting out of all of this, and the friendships that they've developed, and these are I believe these are things that will change sort of the direction and the trajectory of their lives moving forward.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. So this year is the 100th anniversary of women's lacrosse in the United States. And it's a great milestone. We celebrated that. USA Lacrosse magazine, which is a great publication, it's been in existence for, since the 1970s, and then predates it with a newsletter. So it's really one of the, if not the oldest voice of lacrosse. And we did a commemorative issue celebrating the 100 years, and every word, every picture, every graphic was done by a woman. Start there. But the entire issue was honoring women in leadership roles that attribute lacrosse to their development. Kathy Engelbert, WNBA commissioner, head of the SEC, mayor out in Portland, astronauts at NASA, business leaders up and down the line, where they look back and say, lacrosse really helped shape me as a human, as a woman, as a leader, as a person of society. And so, we're very lucky. I've been around lots of sports. I've been fortunate to be in the NFL and worked in the NBA and NHL and global football and rugby. And I never hear more people say lacrosse changed my life versus any other sport impacted their life. And I'm not sure if it's the, spiritual origins of the game. I'm not sure if it's just the tight-knit community that lacrosse develops. It's probably a combination of all those, and the reality that everybody who plays lacrosse has been profoundly changed, and they all have a lacrosse story, and they're very happy to share their lacrosse story of whether they're a parent and it was the rides in the car, or they're an athlete and then their teammates, to your point, or they're a coach, and they'll talk about the highs and the lows, but ultimately how it shaped them to be who they are today. And your nieces are experiencing that, and lacrosse punches above its weight in terms of providing great community outcomes, not only for the athletes, but everyone around those athletes.
Talking about something that certainly touched a lot of people, and one of the things that we have here in our partnership at 76 Capital on the philanthropic side of things is with the Headstrong Foundation. And I don't know if, Mark, we've ever discussed this, but the relationship that we have there, and how my partner Chad Stender is on the board of the Headstrong Foundation, and how we integrate them into a number of the different events that we do, and really trying to raise the awareness and the amazing things that they do, and how it came out of it all started with a Hofstra lacrosse player.
Yeah, Pat texted me, Kalori, the other day, actually, and I did not know the connection. And to your point, they do great work. And for those who don't know, they, as a foundation, honor the Kalori family and provide homes in and around cancer facilities for young patients and families who need that type of support as that a young man or woman goes through cancer treatments. And they do tremendous work. They have a very strong connection to the game of lacrosse, as you know, through Hofstra and Hofstra Lacrosse. And they do great work. They do great work, and they're very well known. And the connection and support that you all have for them is wonderful because they're do impactful work. I think they've got a Philly house, a Boston house. I think they're working on a Carolina house, and they hustle and they work hard to raise those funds. But the impact that they are having for those families is profound.
It's really incredible what they do, and really just the fact that how tight, how important it is to the overall game, and how they work with all the different colleges and all the different programs that raise money, raise the awareness, and also just the idea of helping others and trying to make this world a better place is a big thing for us at 76 and for them, and I know for you as well. And like it's just a really good group to be part of, for us to have this relationship with. And it's amazing every time I'll just see all the different colleges and different tournaments and all the things that they have going on, and it's all around lacrosse.
For sure. I mean, there's a couple charities that really align closely historically year over year with lacrosse, and Headstrong is at the top of the list.
Well, one of the things I wanted to touch on, and certainly you really can't, it's almost like having a technology conversation and not saying AI. We've been talking lacrosse and we haven't said anything about the Rabel brothers yet. So, like that, to me, Paul Rabel was one of the guys who really opened my eyes to the game of lacrosse, just to see what an impact that he's had, now what he and his brother are doing with the PLL, and just that the fact that they're just making it work, right? It's unbelievable what they've been able to do so far. And as you said, having them as one of your partners in with USA Lacrosse, and just thinking about what they've done for the game, the visibility and putting it all out there. I mean, it must have a really incredible impact for you, and also just a place for the professional level with them and NLL and WLL. I mean, to have those things, and for you to be able to aspire to be a professional player is a really important thing for the game.
Well, I can't say enough good things about the leadership that we have in lacrosse right now, and Paul and Mike being at the top of that list, along with Brett and a couple other leaders that we work with around the game. What you really identified there, I think, is so important, is to have a commercially viable, relevant, exciting professional league and leagues, because you do need that as you are a young kid and you're deciding, where am I going to invest my time? Yes, I might love this game, but I'm also possibly looking for competitive outcomes. And that competitive outcome certainly might be, playing at the high school level, might be playing at the collegiate level, it might be pro, it might be U.S. national team. And that ladder of play is critical. And having a pro league that Paul and Mike have been able to do, the outdoor league, now they've introduced the women's outdoor league with it. They've raised the visibility of the sport. They are smart, savvy. They've brought in great investors, and anytime you get good investors and smart money, you got to make smart decisions about being commercially viable as a sport, and they've been able to do that. Now, listen, we all know launching a sport league, it's hard work. Like, it's not glamour. It's not all social posts. It's not all LinkedIn and Instagram and Reels and everything. Like, it's really hard work, and they've done it. And their ability as brothers and family members to do that, I actually marvel at that, because I'm sure it has its moments. But I think they've done a great job of carving out their areas of expertise, and deferring to each other, whether it's the business side or the, kind of the marketing and positioning side. They've done that effectively, and we work very closely with them. They're part of our Elevate 28 group, which is a group that I was able to put together with the PLL and NLL and World Lacrosse and Josai Sports and the Men's and Women's College Coaches Associations, to come together, all focused on getting more kids the opportunity to play. And Paul and Mike are right, in the middle of that. In fact, I will be with Paul and Brett and a few others on Capitol Hill next week, advocating with lawmakers around youth sport, NCAA. That's the level of coordination and communication that we have in working together. So I've got nothing but props for them, and supporting them and their success, because their success is ultimately our success as a game.
That's really tremendous to hear. I mean, I love hearing how you're able to all work together and really lift up the game. That's such an important thing to do.
Brett, and again, I'm going to give credit to the leaders, because it takes a whole group here. And I was just having this conversation, as I said before this call, with Brett Fruden, and he said it best, like, we don't compete with each other the way people think we do. And I think that's really important to recognize, is if you play it right, and look what the NHL, the NHLPA, and USA Hockey did to come together around the Four Nations Cup, and then ultimately led to the Olympics. I mean, everybody benefits from that. We are in the same mode as you look at lacrosse. And what happens when that doesn't happen? And look with baseball. You had baseball players not getting the Olympics. The World Baseball Classic struggled a little bit for those years. Now you're starting to see some momentum around that. And the World Baseball Classic it's a pretty good event. So how do they replicate that moving forward for the Olympics and the like? So for us, and see with the NBA is another good example, we have to do that. For us not to work together, we're doing not only the game a disservice, we're doing our organizations a disservice, we're doing our fans, our constituents, our sponsors, our media partners, all a disservice if we don't work together. But as Brett noted, which I think is right, we don't compete in the way that people think we might. Our calendars overlap. There's always a challenge with that. But the reality is that our commercial success is good by demonstrating the value of lacrosse. PLL or NLL or WLL's commercial success is good for reinforcing the value of investing in lacrosse. And if that has commercial value, we might get the same by either a competitor or the same partner who wants to reinvest. And so that elevates all of us. It's not competition in the way people think. And with this leadership group, we've done a pretty good job of working through some of the challenges maybe that we've had, but more times than not, we agree on the trajectory of where we want to go and how to get there.
Well, you certainly play a very important part of all of that, really bringing up, the next generation of players. Not only, but yes, it's USA Lacrosse. The Olympics are coming up, but this is a global game. You shared with me in Las Vegas the other countries that will be competing or hope to be in the Olympics as well. What are some of the other countries that have very strong lacrosse programs?
Sure. So Canada for sure. U.S. and Canada battle pretty regularly. The Haudenosaunee, which is a Native American team, is fantastic. Japan is really good. Australia, Great Britain, Ireland, Israel, Jamaica. Those are probably some of your best. There's 90 nations in World Lacrosse. World Lacrosse is our international federation, which is comparable to FIFA or FIBA, in soccer and basketball, respectively. They've done a great job of bringing on board a lot of new nations. That's been part of the initiative, is not just getting into the Olympics, but certainly understanding this is a global opportunity for both men and women. And they've done a great job expanding that. And what the Olympics also does, it brings in investment in these other nations. When you're an Olympic sport, that government's sport ministry then invests. So Canada is just getting 7-figure investments for the lacrosse, which they never had before from the government. Australia is the same. It's been the same in South Korea and Japan. They're getting, and these are public information, they're getting investments from their sport ministries to support lacrosse. That did not happen pre-Olympics. So the Olympics is not only about that big moment, but it's also about the investment that happens in other nations to drive both growth, parity, higher level of competition. In the U.S., we don't get government dollars. We're the only nation in the world that does not get government dollars. We got to do everything we do privately funded. We certainly work with the USOPC in support, but ultimately we got to look in the mirror and raise our own funds. But it's good for the game when that happens. The competitive gap is closing. That's the challenge, because you got to keep pace with it. But ultimately, that's good for the game.
So who are some of the supporters of USA Lacrosse that you currently have, and hopefully people that are watching that want to support USA Lacrosse will know how to reach Marc Riccio, CEO of USA Lacrosse. How do they get in touch with you, and then and who are some of the partners today that are really supporting the game in a big way?
Well, I appreciate that opportunity. So the first thing is we have three primary areas with which we generate revenue that fund all those things we talked about, again, from youth opportunity to coach experience to our U.S. national teams. The first one is membership. Membership is anywhere from $40 to $60. There's a lot of great benefits that come with membership. You don't have to be a player or coach to be a member. And 2/3 of our revenue comes from over 420,000 annual members and growing. We have members in every state, all across the US. I mean, that is the infrastructure that really fuels how we do what we do day in and day out. So that one is become a member. Two is philanthropy. We generate a significant amount of dollars in philanthropy. It's an important part of what we do, and we've got a lot of great donors that have been incredibly generous and will continue to push in that direction. And then the third thing is you reference is partners. We have corporate partners that are incredibly supportive of us. So we have some endemic partners like Gate Lacrosse and STX Lacrosse that support not only our national teams, but they support everything that we do. We have Capelli, which has stepped up in a really big way. Capelli is our apparel manufacturer for all of our national teams. Great product. They've done a really wonderful job for us over the last couple of years. And other partners like Quench, as an example, Arrange Financial. And that has been the bigger push for us too, is how do we then take our opportunities through, media, special events, hospitality to those non-endemics. And lacrosse is a great audience. It's a very tight-knit, engaged community. And of course, our national teams, 36 world championships, the most successful lacrosse, international lacrosse team in the world. You partner with the best when you partner with USA Lacrosse.
Absolutely. Well, Marc, this has been amazing having you come back, or actually come back. I feel like coming back. This is your first time on the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show, but the second time we've had this opportunity to have a conversation like this. As we start to wind down, I have a couple more questions that I'd love to ask you. One of the things certainly is, and we touched on this a little bit also in Vegas, is that what we do at 76 Capital is investing in the technology companies that are really, taking the game to the next level. How is USA Lacrosse using technology to take the game, to the next level?
We have, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but we are invested heavily in technology. We have a 7-figure annual investment in technology, in the sense that we have let me just start with the customer experience and member experience. So 420,000 members, having a seamless member experience, everything from the transaction to customer service is a point of entry. You have to be able to provide that. And we do that, and we've got a pretty robust tech stack. We're on a Salesforce platform, but more importantly, yes, AI is the word of the day, of course, for everybody. We have spent both resources and testing to work with different AI platforms to enhance not only our customer experience, but the player experience, assessing players, assessing performance across the organization, and using that. We're investing heavily in terms of training our talent, meaning our people. It's changed how we look at hiring in real time over the last few months, and it's really been interesting. You can get so much more productivity, but also you got to balance that, right? Because it's more, and you don't want to lean so much into AI and technology that you're not doing your own critical thinking. So we really are walking this line in terms of balancing that, and it's been an interesting challenge for the staff as well as leadership. We are in the process right now of redesigning our entire user experience, which will relaunch August 1st. So it's a redesigned technology experience, certainly using the best-in-class technology, AI and machine learning as part of that to customize the experience. We're getting much better at segmentation. A 12-year-old young female lacrosse player in Maine is going to be different than a 23-year-old young coach out in California. Both of them are members, but have different needs, and therefore their experiences and their journey should be different. And we're using technology to be much smarter in terms of how we segment our customer base, and their experience, both online and digitally, will reflect that segmentation. And so we're using technology to do that. I am very bullish on the use of technology to help us play faster, but provide a better member experience. Because ultimately, as I said on the upfront, membership really is our bread and butter. And I'm excited to relaunch that digital experience. And then that's just going to start. We've got other products planned utilizing technology beyond that. But I can say between, Copilot and Claude and even a little chat, like we are working very diligently. We're integrating them into our systems, brand guidelines. We've got a kind of a walled garden because we've got a lot of data that we've got to be very mindful of that is allowing us to work much faster with technology, whether it's external publications and presentations to self-service customer service, which we have been testing and implementing and using effectively when you've got 420,000 members who need service. I can't say enough about our IT team and our organization's embracing of technology.
I mean, one of the things I wanted to get into, and I have so many questions, but I mean, like you just mentioned it about the game, right? How, this, for the most part, and correct me if I'm wrong, was like, the base of lacrosse was more of like a mid-Atlantic East Coast game. And now it's everywhere across the country. I mean, with just even, thinking about, some of the teams that are making it, to the NCAA finals, or just championships in general from the West Coast, from the middle part of the country to the East Coast. I mean, just all across all the different schools. It's just amazing to see, like I was always surprised seeing Denver in there. And then I was like, shouldn't it just be Hopkins and Maryland and Syracuse and, whatever, like, but no. And then Notre Dame's popping in. And I mean, there's just like so many incredible schools that have great programs, but it's all across the country.
It really is. And as I said, you look at the Division III, as I said, Division III NCAA women's tournament, 47 teams from all over the U.S. Same thing with the men's. The Division I tournament, women team from Colorado. You mentioned Denver, Stanford, who is highly ranked, is having a great season. Northwestern, of course, out of Chicago, and that's where the women's Final Four will be in Northwestern this year. So there continues to be that great push westward, if you will. But if you look at Ohio as a top 10 market for us, Texas, California, Washington, Oregon, Indiana are areas where we're seeing great push. Tennessee sanctioned lacrosse last year, meaning sanctioned at the high school level to sponsor a state championship. Nevada just did as well. So you can Utah 2 years prior to that. Illinois is a great market for us, as I said, with Chicago. So we are continuing to see that push. And what's great about the westward push is so many of the families are new to the game. And what that does, it allows you to innovate. They pick up the small-sided game, which is sixes, much faster, and they're having greater experiences and lower churn rates because that experience for the young athletes is better. When you go into new markets like that, they're willing to, they don't know the old, the 10v10, history of the game, say in the Northeast. They want a stick and a ball and a great playing experience. And so moving westward has provided a lot of opportunity to innovate and to be very accepting of the game, to just pick up and play. And so we've been the beneficiary of that. But to your point around technology's got to bring it all together. That technology has to provide a seamless experience. Again, whether you are on the West Coast or you're in, somewhere in Minnesota, or you're, in an endemic market, say Maryland or Long Island, technology, that coach curriculum, for example. So we have a learning management platform. We have more coaches engaged than we've ever had. And that has to do with technology and our ability to bring forward coaching curriculum. That experience has to be just as good no matter where you are in your player journey and no matter where you are in the U.S. And certainly, that's part of both a challenge and an opportunity.
Well, you in your career, you've played sports at the highest of levels. You've been involved at the highest of levels now, in multiple different games, now CEO of USA Lacrosse. And, as we wrap up here, was there a coach or a mentor, throughout your career that's really inspired you and made you a better person and a better leader?
Wow. I will tell you a couple quick stories on that. So coaches change people's lives. And that's part of the reason we're so pro coach, because coach is the difference between maybe a bad experience, an okay experience, or an awesome experience. So when I got this job, first person I called was my mom, because she's also a great mentor and a great person who's taught me how to endure and have gratitude and keep perspective. But I called my college coach, John Danowski, who was Duke's coach, but he was my coach at Hofstra. And he was also the U.S. men's national team coach at the time I got the job. But I called him to thank him for everything he had done. And I called my high school coach. And I played both football and lacrosse and have great reverence for and respect for all those coaches. But I called my high school lacrosse coach, who I'm still in touch with, and thanked him. Because without him, I wouldn't be where I was. He was instrumental in helping me get, opportunity at college. But he's always been there in terms of support structure for me and my lacrosse story. So those two in particular. And then, from a professional standpoint, working at the Jets, I observed coaches. I became a student of coaches and their leadership styles. So I observed Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick and Rex Ryan and Herm Edwards and El Gro and Eric Mangini, all down the line. And you take away, things that resonate, maybe things that don't. But being a student of coaches has really helped me along the way in so many different ways. I'm very, very, very grateful for that.
Well, this has been amazing. Marc, we could go on all day, and thank you so much for coming on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show, and wishing you and USA Lacrosse the best luck in the world, and bring home a big gold medal for us, and just continue to promote and build this game into something that's way bigger than anyone could have ever imagined. So best of luck with everything.
Well, Wayne, thank you very much. It's always been a pleasure. We've had a crash course in getting to know each other over the last couple of months. It's been great, and keep doing what you're doing. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
On behalf of the entire 76 Capital team, thank you for joining us for this edition of our Sports Leadership Show. Please remember to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast network or on the 76 Capital website. You can also explore the hundreds of episodes we've produced over the past several years on those same networks. And as always, go out there and make it happen.